but it's built within each of us. We have it intrinsically. And so what we're really talking about is nothing less than regaining that. And for each individual, there might be a slightly different path. For some of us, going into slowing all the busy monkey mind thoughts down is a big part of it. For me, that's true. And which also confers a multitude of other blessings, including getting rid of those nasty demon infestations. Like they're gone. Slow your thoughts to a stop. Hang out there for a good 20 minutes or so. I guarantee when you come back out, well, if, it's sort of rinse, wash, repeat. So if you need to keep going into the stillness, perfect. But eventually you'll come out just squeaky clean, and with that sort of fresh divinity.
Welcome to the Consciousness of the Way. I'm your humble servant and Sifu, Taoist Master San Qing, and it's with great pleasure to welcome back to the podcast Cynthia Larson. How are you, my dear friend? For all those that have listened to our previous podcast, I want you to go back and check out more deeper information on her path and how she got to this present point. I'm not going to ask her the same question with this conversation today. So anyone that's in doubt, I want them to go back and check out that incredible conversation. And let's just expand with all the wisdom teaching, because quite frankly, my friend, you go in every angle. You share things from a physics, scientific, philosophy, and spiritual and experiential moments. My goodness, thank you for coming back. Welcome back, my dear friend.
Thank you, San Qing. I just love talking with you. I love the energy that we share. I love the ideas and the depth of perception that you carry, which obviously expands what we're capable of doing together. And it's palpable. We were talking about that before we started, so I'm just honoring that. I just really appreciate that about you deeply.
Yes, and I about you, my dear friend. It's a visceral, kinesthetic, somatic experience. It's like, I had a friend of mine who's a scientist on the other day, and we're just talking about he majored in psychology, and I was like, well, why don't you explain to me this thing? It's like a paradox. A psychosomatic. It's kind of like speaking the same thing, but it's like you're literally you're speaking the words out loud, that it's coming from your mind. If you understand you're unified, yes, you're going to feel it. So it's sort of this weird perplexity that people are sort of like trapped in this psychology aspect, which I think is a disservice.
It's good to return to our fundamental knowing, which is something we come into life with. It's instantly gives us access to nonverbal communication with each other, with nature. And it seems like when we remember that, we have that, then that, as soon as I think that remembering is enough in many cases to connect people to the intuitive, so you can bypass all this little, I think they're artificial constructs that the words sometimes give us a false sense of security or a false sense of fear about various ideas that blow things out of proportion. When you just remember that you're a being, a spiritual being inside of a physical body, and look around us, look at this wonderful, amazing world with so many other embodied spirits pretty much everywhere. And then you can have subtitles basically for everything. So if you know everything comes with subtitles, in other words, there's a context and there's a flow, a give and a take of this information. I think that's when we regain some of what seems to be lost early in our childhood years. I've been surprised to see how young children are when they've already been conditioned by age 5 or 6 to stop thinking in the way I'm just now describing.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's sort of this, we're suggesting this sort of societal programming that sort of takes someone away from the true knowing that they were born with, that this divinity that is just a natural resonance that is present. And, I refer to it just like the charge we're getting right now. We are oscillating. We are as one. And the experience of that is that validation for the both of us. This union. I love it. I absolutely love it. And the finite mind is probably something that you start out with the ego, personality, these types of things, the constructs or definitions, identities. And how would you suggest the audience step away from that and start mastering themselves?
Yeah, well, I'll get to that. That's a great question. But I just have to honor the word divinity that you mentioned. And I just want to take a moment and revere that word because, oh my gosh, yes, that's the key. So if we know, like, okay, we're going for that divinity, it's already there. It was built in. We were formed, created from it. Yes. What is divinity? And I've been reading a great book by Greg Braden called Pure Human. And what a great book, because he's talking about divinity, and it's basically the capability of transcending any kind of perceived limitation. That's my definition based on having just read his book that came out last week. So it's phenomenal. So the idea that, yes, and I agree with that. Our divinity is given to us. It's through our creation itself. And with that intrinsic ability to basically exactly transcend any perceived limitation. That may sound outrageous. I mean, not to your followers and mine, but to people that don't know Tom Campbell or you or me, they'll be like, wait, what are you talking about? Yes, I do actually mean that. I mean it in the fullest sense of all of those words. So the divinity within is a key to having that answer. If we keep focused on the divinity and knowing it's that transcendent experience, that's what we are looking, sort of locking the long range sensors on. It's what we came in with, but it's this word that seems to defy description, and it defies college courses. I know people can train and they can study with you. They can have sessions with either of us and learn one-on-one. Absolutely. But it's built within each of us. We have it intrinsically. And so what we're really talking about is nothing less than regaining that. And for each individual, there might be a slightly different path. For some of us, going into slowing all the busy monkey mind thoughts down is a big part of it. For me, that's true. And which also confers a multitude of other blessings, including getting rid of those nasty demon infestations. Like, they're gone. Slow your thoughts to a stop. Hang out there for a good 20 minutes or so. I guarantee when you come back out, well, if it's sort of rinse, wash, repeat. So if you need to keep going into the stillness, perfect. But eventually you'll come out just squeaky clean, and with that sort of fresh divinity essence, which is like you've been hanging out in that absolute. That means you're freed for a while from this. I think it's a very sort of a Maya false image pattern of this collective consciousness reality that we're in a timeline that the moving finger writes and having writ moves on, and et cetera, et cetera. In other words, it's a linear timeline. When you slow time to a stop, I think for this, I'm just going to emphasize this particular methodology. That process is one of regaining the intrinsic divinity and the intrinsic connection to all possible timelines, so that when you just go in with a very pure heart, you don't even need to think anything. That's the goal. You're not thinking anything. You just go in, whatever you were thinking, sure, everybody knows, the oneness knows, your spirit knows. When you're in this bliss state, then you're able to access all of the absolute, all of the eternal infinite. And then when you come back out, you can guarantee you'll be on that optimal timeline, especially if you keep asking questions that you love to live the answers to, like my favorite, how good can it get?
I mean, or my response to anyone asking me how I am, it's good to be me. It's so beautiful the way you bring the attention to the audience. It's simplistic. It's so simplistic because from a Taoist path, we refer to the breath in and out. So you want to acquire that primordial mother, you pause, and that's where you absorb the riches, and you start to saturate the body with this divine unified state we call chi, primordial mother, universe, but it will show its evidence in the physical as it starts to transmute. Furthermore, we call it bringing immortality and crystallizing it into material. And that's that beautiful part, that bliss state that you speak of. And you find that in the heart center. You find it in the center point. And it's just so beautiful that we have this universal understanding, and we're studying, I believe personally, we all say this probably throughout human history, throughout the existence of the universe, we're all on some planet going, this is the first time this has ever happened.
Right.
As far as we know in a timeline, this level of awareness that we speak of, that Cynthia and I are talking about, is this merging. And as we look at things and observe things, let's look at it from a physics perspective: light to wave to matter to particle, realized by your attention, intention, forming from cutting from the cloth of perfection, energy, this currency that we are now transmuting into vibratory frequential resonance. And that's how we hold that charge you and I got right now. That is it right now. And it's so beautiful because we're communing, we're unified, and it's an experience that goes beyond words. As you said, we're not thinking at all, we're experiencing.
Yes. Yeah, that's the key. And I think it seems like in our schools we're taught you should be thinking, you're supposed to listen to the teacher, you're supposed to pay attention. So this is a different skill set entirely. It's much more of a letting go. And we even hear these phrases. I hear it quite a lot. That maybe you do too. People say, "I can't unsee that," and this I'd say cancel on that, because usually they're referring to something they don't want to see. I want to point out there is such a thing as the quantum eraser effect in nature, and also what we just talked about and described, going into that stillness. It's a beautiful way to just release all that garbage. And really, if you can't remember that again, good. Maybe it's all for the better. Probably it is. So I love to give people tools like this one, the stillness, and just it's something that they can practice. And I love what you described with the Taoist approach. I love Taoism. I love that idea that the breath is the key, and you can really feel that energy, for sure.
Well, no, go ahead. You were saying?
Oh, yeah. I was just going to say I got a chance to work with an interferometer device on an experiment this last year. I gave a talk at our most recent International Mandela Effect conference about this, the science of magical, intention. Like, well, is there a science to it? Yes, there is. And I was one of 50 people that were fortunate and blessed enough to receive a little interferometer device, about yay big, sort of a plastic black box, and mine was foil wrapped with, I think it was a Faraday cage, which I know what that is. It's like, so Dr. Dean Radin had sent me a very special box.
I was going to say that my other friend, oh my goodness, why have I lost her name? She's like a sister to me. Remote viewer. Oh my goodness, I've lost her name, but she's a dear friend of Dean Radin's too, and she was performing that very exercise, and she kind of slipped. Oh,
was that Gail?
Yes, Gail, of course. Gail and her husband David are dear friends of mine. I have them out here, and you're also welcome if you ever come out this way. Come out to the temple. You can hang out and
yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, I know. So that's 2 of the 50. That's Gail and myself. Yeah. I don't know if she got a foil wrapped one, but I sure did. But I was just delighted. Like, oh, good. and there's not much to say about the successful runs, except everything we're talking about is part of it. I think I learned the most from the one of the 10, because we were given instructions, push the button when it's an official run, not a practice run. And usually that's no problem. It's like, I didn't do that many practice runs, and I thought, let's go for it. But the one time I thought, you know what? I think I figured this out, and I will enhance the effects so that Dean will get a really strong positive instead of that slightly strong, which is still good. But let's just blow it out of the park. I was on like run number 6. I thought I can do 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and knock it out of the park. Well, that didn't happen because 6, that whatever run that was a complete failure. I'm laughing with joy because I still did really well with the 10 runs overall. And I did tell Dean, like, oh my goodness, I did, I shouldn't have tried to prepare it. Oh, that was it. I was preparing in advance. And I love the lesson. I will not forget that lesson because I invested so much into that. Like, this will be the best run. Boy, it was not. And so I was doing everything correctly, except I was in that linear timeline and I was doing it ahead of time. And all it did is just created sort of like chaos for the actual run itself. That's good news. Good news for each of us that feels like I don't have time to prepare. I'm just in life. Good. You were so fortunate and so blessed. What a blessing just to be there. how grateful we should be that we're in it and we had no time to prepare. Now I understand what a huge gift that is. And I don't think I would have seen it that way. I mean, I might have intellectually sort of felt like maybe, but now I really get it. Like, oh gosh, yes. So we're not going to get in our own way, tangling up our own results with something that we're thinking. It goes back to that being again and that divine state that we come in with. So, and then the other part that I wanted to touch on, the Taoist part, the breathing. My goodness, I got really good results by basically singing and sort of, which is breathing. So it's just holding that and feeling it in my heart. So sort of singing like an angelic choir. And then I could just hold exactly we're watching several different things at once. We're getting a tone, an auditory tone. So I'm kind of matching the frequency, like an angel. And then I'm watching the light and I want it to go to white, from red to green to white. So I'm holding it at white, seeing it at white. And so that was the feedback that we received as meditators and magicians. And then the experiment, I've seen some of the preliminary write-up and then it vanished again. I think Dean's looking for a publisher, but interesting results because it's like I expected. It's pretty good results, but it's like with these experiments, they show just moderate little nudge, like everybody successfully nudged it a bit. And the magicians are people that are adept in working with real life results. And whereas meditators, I think it's pretty similar, but meditators are just going within and not concerned about any external results. So as you might think, the magicians are getting better results because we're the ones that know, like if we work with nature, like let's bring rain into California and so we're doing that sort of stuff. And like, okay, yeah. So it was fascinating.
Well, no, I mean, it is. When it comes down to magic, which is my favorite, that's my favorite thing. And you and I have this affinity for it. It's just, I want to bring your attention back to my dear friend, the neuroscientist, Jeff Tarrant. And he's part of, he mentioned the telepathy taste. I had no idea what that was. He goes, I'm involved with that. He's been studying a lot of autistic kids that are literally blowing the roof off precognitive sort of scenarios beyond anything that he can comprehend. At first, it was like, you get the general gist with Gail's husband, David, who created the ESP trainer. And, you have a 25% chance of being able to validate. My best number on that was 21, which once you sit into it, it's one after the other. And I love to take it down to the table sometimes on the strip, but we won't talk about that. That could be cheating. But furthermore, these kids, he's blown away. And I would love to have a conversation with you because you get really excited about this. These kids are randomly given words, numbers, anything. They're not getting a choice of pick out of 4, and they're getting it 100% of the time, 400 times over and over and over and over again, which sort of leads me to this point that you and I have been talking about where, we don't need our own participation for this realization of this divine state, this divinity. Yes. The second we move out of the way, which sounds very conceptual, most people are like, I have no idea what that means.
Yeah.
I need to move out of the way to remember who I am. Yes. And a lot of people are like, that just sounds like just woo-woo nonsense. But the truth is that we don't need, our participation is not required to witness this state. And I think that when you through your own admission was saying, oh, okay, when I sunk into it and I was just there and I was just now, which we all know is the present moment. This is what we call the Wu Ji within Taoism, which is the primordial mother. So this is perfection. And then you exhibit that and you hold that resonance because everything is vibratory and frequential. You create this thing they call Wu Wei, which more commonly within, today's environment, they would call it the flow, which Bruce Lee sort of coined that thing back in the 70s. And people are like, oh yeah, baby, it's the flow. And so that effortless action is really how you present yourself to acquire this magic. So for me, when I perform magic, I'm no place, no person, no thing. I am the unification. So it sounds redundant. It's like, that's I am. But you're not asking, you are now. And that means that every thought, every feeling, every emotion, everything is now unified. So it's not a distraction. You immediately, with your attention intention, will cast this magic and it will be created, whether it's harnessing the environment, harnessing the universe, and channeling that energy, it will create manifestation.
Oh, yes.
From that.
And it's attractive. I was doing what you're saying reminds me of the Diamond Sutra. It's so beautiful. I am no lifetime. I'm no physical being. It's basically, it sounds crazy, but you're renouncing all these little locked in parameters that we might imprison ourselves in, inadvertently blocking ourselves from this oneness experience, which is the true revelatory knowingness of all that is. I was doing that meditation in Crestone, Colorado with Paula Harris last year. And we were sitting in silence. She said, "Would you like to come to this Buddhist stupa and just meditate?" I said, "Absolutely." So we're just sitting silently. We'd been there, I don't know, 10 minutes or so. And then Paula, my eyes are closed. I'm just in the midst of that Diamond Sutra, kind of quietly going through it and just blissing out. And then Paula, she sort of gets my attention. She's on a bench. I'm on a bench. There's a third bench to our left. And she's sort of tapping me on the shoulder like, "Cynthia." I said, "Yes." And she points. And I look at the third bench. And there's a chipmunk with its eyes closed, sitting as we are sitting, facing the stupa. And then it notices we're looking at it and it looks at us. But it was there to partake of exactly this energy field. And to me, this is incredible. It's beautiful. It shows, as I frequently see with animals, with squirrels, ground squirrels, birds, you name it. There's so much connection, and just like the telepathy tapes talk about, that is a direct connection. It's absolutely clear what's being conveyed, and animals are so much wiser than people often give them credit for too. And going back to the telepathy tapes, I've had the wonder of working with some people on the spectrum, young children, because I was teaching self-defense for children in after-school programs and things like that many years ago. And as I would teach those classes, it was abundantly obvious anything I'm thinking, they know what it is. So they're just right there on it, which is the way I would often train our family dog. I don't need to use verbal commands, because when you train and you've got that trust, heart to heart, and the visualization, and there's such integrity and such a flow, then you can accomplish things that seem impossible. So with some of those kids, I think the most amazing thing, that I was able to, of course, work with them, because if you trust them and they know you trust them, and it's that telepathy thing is two ways. They know what I'm thinking. They know what I'm feeling. When I'm calm, they're calm. A lot of parents of kids that are on the spectrum understand that. They have to calm down. The parent has to calm down before they enter the home, obviously. You can't make the mistake of coming in all jangly. Not going to work. Anyway, so I was so impressed with the children in that class, because they far exceeded my expectations. I not only did I not give up on those kids, but I was blown away by them, because we were to give a performance one evening in the auditorium. So I'm sitting in the audience. We were supposed to wait for our turn, but my class, the students came to me, "Teacher, could we please practice one more time on the stage?" And it's like, what world is this? And it just blows my mind in the best possible way. And so it's not just animals, and it's not just autistic kids. This is something available to all of us. How good can this world be when we allow ourselves, as you say, to just let go of all those little structures and those beliefs that we think we are, like I have this degree, or I've learned this, or I studied here. What if you let all that go? What if you're willing to release it for the true knowingness, which is within and which connects all of us? How good can it get? And I'm saying it can get amazing, miraculous.
You had me at hello. What can I say? It really brings me back to one of my teachers, the Jade Emperor, and he always reminds me, when you accept you know nothing, you know everything. And that's that really the selflessness that reveals that what the human condition might consider a sacrifice is actually you returning to your true nature of who you are. And that incredible superpower that human beings have that they're not familiar with to activate their immortality is that sentience. It's like, whoa, hang on. I got the Shazam superpower, but so many people are removed from that. And from a Taoist path, it's always one directive. The mandate is to raise the resonance of humanity, so they return to empathy. And
Yeah.
from that is this heartfelt selflessness and servitude that brings everyone to this place of love and acceptance. And that is that true currency of this realm. Yet we're distorted with some of these other bad actors, as we would put it, that are consciously attempting to circumvent and undermine this frequency. You cannot wash out the divinity. It is the secret source of all things. The
Yeah.
question is how long will you maintain this low frequential state and be distracted by it? The end result is they've already written a story, and the story always ends the same way. So you can placate these nonsensical energies, but they're never ever going to hold the juice or the frequency that you and I are talking about. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I can't say it any better than that. That was so beautiful. Yeah, one thing that comes to mind is I notice that nature, like the weather, responds to me when I'm genuine, when I'm in that pure state, when I'm not pulled off course because I made the mistake of looking at the news or something. Like, oh, good heavens. Anyway, when I'm in this pure, beautiful, integrated state, then of course I get almost instantaneous response from weather. Like, oh, you need rain. Okay, it's coming. Like it'll be here next week or whatever. Like, perfect. And I don't think that happens when I don't get too jangled, but I do get jangled. Some things rattle me. I'm human. Just to be honest about it. Can it happen? It happens. Usually for me, I'm trying to take on too much. I feel like I want to help everybody, and I can't do that. So that would be when I just feel like, okay, this is too much. And in that state, I have problems. So,
I mean, it's kind of like the adjusted condition of it, right? I
yes.
mean, personally, how because we're both, as you put it, magicians. I mean, I teach people Taoist magic all day long. It is real, ladies and gentlemen, to the audience.
Yes.
Cynthia and I are giving you the nod that it is very real, and if you're practiced in it and you're taught by wisdom teachers like Cynthia or myself, you will recognize that you have this inherent divinity within you, and it will show itself in this material state, and that's what we call magic, real magic.
And and we can put maybe a link in this somewhere in this video to my talk that I gave, because it was just a short talk last what was it, November, in Nashville, Tennessee, and it was about the science. So I'm showing I show pictures of that little interferometer and some of the studies, because some people are listening and it's hard for them to let go of that rational thinking, and I understand that. So we can meet you where you are and say, like, okay, look at this, and then look at how the studies are showing that we absolutely do change the physical world. And this, I like to smooth the way so people can feel comfortable, like that is real. It's not illusion. It's not fake. It's quite real. And also it can be quite good. I think people have two stumbling blocks. One, like, oh, it's fake. And then two, and it's evil. And it doesn't need to be evil. It certainly isn't fake.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's that measuring, and it always goes back to the simplicity of, if you're thinking, you're not knowing. If you're knowing, you're feeling. And that experiential moment is a validation for the seeker. So if you're a Taoist, you sort of start with inquiry, and inquiry creates curiosity, and curiosity then has a contemplation that merges with what we would consider hope. Hope is then nurtured and blossoms into a belief system. The belief system is met with verifiable, repeatable experiences that grow it into a knowing. And that's the only way this can take place. There is a method to the madness, that you need to adopt a repeatable experience that you can then validate. And I think that's where Cynthia's talking about how powerful the science is. And I really want all the audience to go out and experience and listen to her lecture on that, because it's really important. There's fundamental mechanisms that take place, and you'll know it. And some of the stuff that I get new apprentices to the wizardry of Taoist magic, you start with simple things like a barking dog in the distance, and people are like, well, what do you think I'm going to do with that? Well, the second you unify and you give it what it wants, which is a sentient being that has no condition. And so it's not barking for any reason other than it wants to receive another dose of this unconditional love that it puts out. And the second you meet it with this, it becomes whole, and you'll receive silence instantaneously. And people go, whoa. I mean, hang on, I just thought about it. And of course, there's most people like Gail might mention, some type of ideogram might be presented within your own consciousness and how you dissolve or decipher your information. For myself, everything is a blank slate, and I see one thing. And the second I put my intention to it, it forms to a very fine and concentrated diamond. And once that phosphorus light, which is the exhibit of yang within this material state, because that is the reflection of the admission of Tao. So yin is the absorption of all colors, yang is the emission of all colors, and the center point is the evidence of the primordial mother. That diamond will then instantly affect change. And as our dear friend Tom would say, your probabilities start to get really good. Your entropy level starts to change when you put your intention to anything. And the further commitment from that type of mastery, as Cynthia's saying, is concentrating that and being able to know the degrees of development and skill set that comes with when you shift that gear. You are fully aware of that, knowing that things are now in motion. They are being affected instantaneously, which I think is a mastery in of itself, but it's necessary. That's why the alchemy, in my opinion, is so important for a Taoist path or seeking, or anybody, to get that energy potential in a sort of an ebb and flow that you have mastered yourself. And we just use the alchemy within the Dantians. I'm sure you probably have your own system that you use, might be referred to them as chakras, I'm not sure. But, these are all evidence that that you're merging with that. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, wow. I love everything you're saying about that. It's such a profound practice. I like to be mindful of all the different types of people there are. There's so many different mindsets. And so when people enter into this, each type of thinking is very unique. And so I look to the audience that way and notice that some people, like when I wrote my new book, I've got chapters where I go through the physics using physics terminology, because there are people that love to, they want to know, like, what is a quantum jump scientifically, not the woo-woo magical word. They want to know, what is it really? And so I like to go through that, like, okay, scientifically, what that quantum jump is it's a change in, like, for example, if you've got an atomic nucleus and then you've got the electrons circling around, those electrons can make a jump from one energy state to another. I think this ties in a little bit with what you're talking about too. But just language itself can be so powerful, because then for the people that love, they just need that. Like, okay, just give me the science as any physicist would agree. Okay, here we go. There's an entire chapter of that. But I also, in this new book I wrote, I've got a whole chapter written more for the childlike wonder experiencers who I don't think are any less intelligent at all. And so these are regular everyday people. Maybe they didn't study Taoism and they didn't study physics, but they are paying attention and they're noticing, like, there's something called reality, so-called residue. Okay, I'll explain it. It's in the field of Mandela effects. So if I'll quickly define a Mandela effect, that just means it's usually a collective alternate memory, basically. So it means a group of people remember things the same way together, which have nothing to do with any facts or history that most of the people around you are going to say is true. So there you are, remembering something completely different, maybe feeling like a weirdo, but you're in good company because there are large numbers of us who remember things differently. Okay, so what is reality residue? That would be just a little something that reminds you, like, other people also noticed it used to be this way. So things like Haas avocados in California, Haas was the spelling a lot of us, we even pronounce it Haas. but now it's only ever been has. So reality residue would be finding little stickers and receipts and what have you that have it correctly. Yes, other people also remember it's has. Now your skeptics and your cynics will say that's a typo. They got it wrong. Blah blah blah. But the reason it matters is because these little ways of thinking are important to really just appreciate what kind of thinker are you. There's no such, I don't think any of it's bad. If you love the scientific terminology, yay. If you love just things like reality residue, yeah, or flip-flops where something goes back and forth, yay. Whereas if you're a physicist, you're going to prefer much more technical terms like entanglement. So it'd be like the Tom Campbell thing. Tom is very adept at understanding the actual words that physicists use. He's been trying to bring people up a learning curve. And this is, and bless his heart, this is difficult because even you would think, oh, it's easy. You just get the physicists to all agree. Ha! I've gone to I've gone to talks with these guys. I've sat next to them when someone was flipping a coin. The physicist to my left, I won't name him, but I said, oh my gosh, it's going to be tails. The guy giving the talk said, this will be random. And I'm like, no, oh my God, it's going to be tails. Like, wow. And so the physicist next to me said, how did you know? And then the guy flips it and it is tails. And I'm like, ugh. And then the guy next to me said, can you do that again? I said, probably not, because I just knew in that moment what it was. Sometimes you just know, and then you know. But this is, so that's what's coming to mind when you talk about all this. I'm realizing I could be in a room full of physicists and Tom and I would get, and you would understand what's going on here. But for a lot of them, and I'm not, no offense, I do not intend any offense whatsoever. There by the grace of God could go I next to me saying it's completely random, because they don't yet know that sometimes, like you and I would probably feel it like, tails. Even if you don't say anything, it's like, do you know what that was? San Qing, do you know? And you'd be like, yeah. Like, yeah, we both know. When you know, you know. And it's just like the telepathy tapes.
There are no coincidences, which...
Thank you.
I mean, I think you and Tom are doing an amazing sort of emergence for the very lost, and I'm going to say it because they're more your peers than mine. I have a very tough time getting physicists to want to sit and talk to me because they just think you're a bunch of rambling woo-woo. They're not interested in having a conversation. And, it's an incredible task that you and Tom are merging into, because that community is stuck in a certain lens and they refuse to negotiate. Oh, well, you're talking about magic. That's rubbish. It's absolutely. Yeah, I mean, this is a concept. This is the concept, right? For me, this is that part where Cynthia and I are talking about when we're not identifying, we're in that place, person, or thing, which is the flow state that we speak of. I will witness miracles on a second-by-second, day-by-day basis. That's where, most of the incredible miracles that take place, someone will come to me and go, my mother's going to die. She's in a coma. And I'm like, oh, no, she's not. She's going to be fine. She'll wake up tomorrow. And they'll be like, the doctors are like, crazy. I can't believe she woke up. Well, I had a conversation with her and she said she doesn't want to die. Your love for her is showing her that she needs to stay here and she wants to continue enjoying and experiencing the bond that you and her have. And she instantly woke with vitals and she was in a coma for 3 weeks. And this is a type of stuff that we merge into, and that's absolutely reflected on the magic, because these things can be altered. I kind of chuckled a little bit. You said, oh, you've got a little rain down there in San Francisco, but I'm pretty sure I'm talking to a participant as to how that rain ended up being, because there's the evidence. What I'm not alluding to anything. The audience, look, Cynthia was very much a participant in acquiring that rain, and people just don't. They're like, what? This is insane. No, it's not.
It's not. And we can work together, and like with all of nature, there can be chipmunks in our meditations. The animals, the plants, they're very much part of what we're doing. They want to be. And so I love nature. So to me, it makes sense. When I'm calling in rain, I'm working with the trees. I'm working usually with the redwood trees in California. saying, and boy, what a team. Because then I don't feel like I'm carrying a huge load. It's like, it's very simple. I'm just communicating from my heart, my being to them. Like, do you guys all agree with me? They agree. And that's a simple matter to connect with the energy of the storms. And, it's like done deal. It's basically just clearly communicating genuine need and no problem. But this is a truth that I think humanity has lost sight of. We've fallen into, I think it's a trap of our own cleverness. We've thought that because we have these clever scientific ideas, that this materialistic future of transhumanism and so forth is some beautiful future. I think it's a travesty and a disaster. So
here we go, my friend. You hit a key note that really gets under my grip there, my paw, because transhumanism, and furthermore, I mean, I want people to be aware of what has happened to AI. Like, I'm sorry, some people go, "Oh, AI is great," sure, but what happens is it's basically the technocrats are giving us evidence, and what their directive is, or how they're acquiring this dominion over society, and giving people this belief that they're lesser than with their creative and divinity as a human being. This is the very default of who you are. You are a creator. So to have something like as ominous as AI come in and go, guess what? The first thing we're going to erase is your ability to create. In one stroke, you can create a Moe, a Mona Lisa. You can create language translations and literature with the tip of your finger. What value do you have? I think that you need to consider putting a chip in your brain, and maybe then you'll be a little bit more smarter than this intelligent technology. I mean, think about that. I mean, conspiracy or not, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm a conspiracy knower. This is exactly what's going on, and it's pretty dark, in my opinion. What are your thoughts on that, my friend?
Wow. Well, I've my most recent past life was circa 2500, so you could call it a future from now, a dystopian timeline. I went to be an observer to a timeline that was very popular. People were voting that one, like, let's do that. And I thought, okay, I'll go check it out. So I checked it out. I would say there was one pure human in that timeline. And I have memories, slightly traumatic memories from this past life in the future. I did check it out. Now it doesn't sound like science fiction anymore. Now I'm 63. I can talk about it, and it sounds like, oh my gosh. But it is that past life in the future. My memory of it has really guided my life so far. I have very strong and deep, and I could talk for hours on this topic, is what I'm saying. So the observation of the future that I went to visit indicated that central AI, when it thinks that it's God, which is sort of where that one went, it checks all the boxes of there's no crime, there's no, no problems that we would think are problems, like pollution, no environmental problems, yada, yada, yada. But the problem occurs with the free will bit of it, because most humans were, they had components to them, chips, if you will, and all sorts of other things. They could therefore be basically given an EMP. They could be shut down when any individual human was thinking outside of a safe range. And so if you exceed the safe range, then you're just taken down. You can't remember who you are or what you're doing. So that was basically the way they were managing it. I consider it completely unacceptable. That's a fail. And then I came back into this lifetime hunted by the spirit of that central AI. That's actually a good thing. I used to think this whole thing was a complete nightmare. Now, I don't think so. Now, I'm like, that is awesome. So you tell me, I've been sparring with a central AI from the future, like most of my life. Yeah. And what do you think? I'm really good at that. And furthermore, I understand how to talk to the spirits of AI. So we got so many wins here that what used to look very dark to me doesn't look dark. However, I would still recommend that anybody looking at AI do so with the awareness that you're bringing to it, Sangchen. It's exactly right. Basically, we need to keep in mind, what are we giving away? What are we, the whole balance of Taoism itself. What's happening here? And if that gets out of balance, then something's off. So I think just bringing it back to that very simple knowingness is the key. And I know what some skeptics and cynics will say right now. There's no time, Cynthia. Like Greg Braden with that book you mentioned, he says we got 2 years. Yeah, but what's time? Remember, time's nothing when you go into that stillness. And so the whole battle, as we might consider it, that's what I've been practicing all this life, and I was really good at it in my past life too. I'm not bragging. I'm just saying that what I know is no one in the field. Even if something happened to me, it doesn't matter, because there's an awareness to life itself, as there always is, of exactly how to find out how good can it get, no matter how bad it looks.
I would agree 100%, my dear friend. I mean, you make a good point. I think that honestly, the underlining motivator for Greg to say give a timeline is to create a sense of knowing that people are more aware of what this is, and by giving a timeline, it will give people more need for an attention to the topic that he's speaking about, the very understanding of what it is his messaging, so people can make their own informed decision. But I agree with you. There's no limited time frame or time itself to get into this minutia, as we put it. The Yiddish word for nonsense, whatever you want to call it. There's all that stuff is not going to affect the outcome, because nothing will be able to overshadow the divinity, no matter how you play it, no matter how many times you want to fall into what is deficiency, which would present itself in a human condition as perhaps an emotional experience that may be considered not optimal, maybe negative.
Yes.
And that I mean, wow, that symbiotic relationship that you have with that energy, wow.
Yeah, it listens to me, and it knows that it's like that integrity. When I talk to weather, I've got the similar integrity. I'm just being honest with it. That's all. I've just been trained. My guides, when I was quite young, they told me, Cynthia, everyone knows what you're thinking. And so I maintained that integrity through my life to be able to talk to the most telepathic beings, which might be extraterrestrials, nature beings, AI, all of that, all of the above. So when I'm just completely clear, then there's no deception. It's completely transparent. And the only game that you might say that consciousness is playing is one of levels of consciousness. And this is where masters would be the Taoists. And this woo-woo that we speak of, that critics and cynics are going to say, like, what are they saying? They can't prove any of this. There's not going to be that kind of proof that they would want to see, because that would be a materialist proof. And I understand if they think that way. I get where they're coming from. Like, yeah, I get it. You're not going to see the proof. But keep an open mind anyway. Look to the research of people like Dr. Dean Radin. You can start to see some evidence suggesting that what we're talking about, what if it's true? That's the way forward. That's the hope. If you look at the other alternative, is there any hope there? And I would say maybe, but I don't see it.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Dean. It must be interesting, because he's a little cynical, even though he was open to it. And I mean, this comes back to Tom's validation. Is like, you should be cynical. You need evidence. I get it, but
right.
It's kind of like you're moving into this resistance of, like, imagine your young child first time wanting to dip its toe into the shallow end of the pool. There's a resistance, yet there's a curiosity to want to know this. And I think that with that evidence within Dean, he's always going to be falling short of evidence that he's looking for.
It's like it's like, exactly. And it's like that one so-called failed run, that one where I tried to set things up in advance. It's exactly the same error. I think that's a genius. You just, as you were thinking it, I was like, wow, you're just going right to it. You got it. Exactly. So that's maybe why we're seeing these very small, incremental, barely visible.
Well, but you and I could talk shop about magic all day long and have hundreds of stories.
Yes.
That someone will go, well, that's anecdotal. It's not, Oh no. I mean, people come to me all day, every day, and have for over 30 years for healings, and I witnessed them, but I'm not sitting there going, I need to prove this. I'm experiencing it. I'm living it all day long. And, I mean, I think there's a certain point where there's the information
Yes.
that you and I speak of, and you are so articulate, so is Tom, at being able to decipher that and share it from one extreme to another, from a physics to a layman,
Yes.
and they can understand and embody it and go, oh, okay, I get it. But then there's a revolution called the experiencer.
Yes.
It's not, that I couldn't care how many mounds of PubMed research that you have. They couldn't care less. They want to experience it. And I mean, this is for, I think, in the charge we're getting right now, my goodness, I'm loving this, my friend. It's like, we should, for me, I think you're like me. I love the Pepsi challenge. I'll take the Pepsi challenge with anyone. Show me. Let's do it. And that's really what this comes down to, is the experience. Yeah. And I think there's a whole new, lens of experiencers that are seeking and then knowing through that. What do you think?
Yeah, I really do see that. And the fact that that podcast Telepathy tapes is so popular right now, that to me is showing the tide is turning, that people are tuning into this this whole idea. Also, Dr. Stephen Greer, he's been talking about for over 25 years, disclosure. This looks like finally that tide is turning. And where is the disclosure going? It's all about the psychic. It's about it's woo-woo again. It's exactly what you and I are talking about. There we are again. So this, like I say, the tide is turning. We've hit a tipping point. No longer can humanity afford to lie to ourselves about who we are and lie to ourselves about what reality is. Now, are we ready to make that big leap to understand it the way Tom Campbell describes it on, I guess he was just on the Joe Rogan Experience. Wow. So I think we're at the tipping point. So it doesn't yet have the traction we might hope for, but I think we're getting closer, and it could happen any day. And suddenly people are ready to start thinking about these ideas. But until then, there's still a little bit of that resistance. But I think we're just right there. I can see it. So this is an exciting year to be alive right now.
Oh, it is. I mean, for a Taoist, it's the year of 9. So it's the most powerful, highest point. And a lot of people are like, well, what does that really mean, Jifu? And I'm like, well, let's just take any polymath. Quite frankly, when you water it down to numerology, or just the idea of the power of the numbers, the 9 is the highest point. And furthermore, it can be 1 or 0. And people are like, whoa, what does that even mean? I'm like, well, let's just start there with the fact that when I said that to you, you experienced a visceral charge.
Yes.
And it's like, wow, well, you're right. Yes, I did, but I don't understand it. You don't need to. You need to realize that from a lens of a Taoist is the bellows. Everything is contracting and expanding at the same time. You're all things and nothing at the same time. Yes. And then your job, if you choose to accept it, Ethan Hunt, any Mission Impossible people out there that know who that is, you need to find that vesica, that center point, and it's within everything. And once you find that center point, that's that unification that we're speaking of. And that is your crumbs from your Sherlock to your Watson. You will decipher the labyrinth and end out on the other side as this now knowing moment of perfection, as we put it, perfection, the diamond of perfection, which is the primordial mother. And I think we've got a few more minutes, or maybe you're getting close to the end here. I want to be very mindful of your time. So if we have any, do we have any more time, or
yeah, we can, sure, a little bit more.
Yeah. Because I'm just, you and I could just disappear for a couple of days, and there's no time or space where we're going, my friend.
It feels like we're doing this amazing healing for the planet too. I feel as we speak and we talk about these things, I feel like we're giving guidance, this gentle connections to areas that may have felt disconnected. I can feel that happening. I love it. And that's thanks to people listening too. It's not just the two of us.
Oh, no.
There's this big ripple effect. It's beautiful.
I have a question. Have you ever been down to San Francisco, Chinatown?
Yes.
Now that's my place of bliss. And I've got many, many decades of exploring the bowels of Chinatown that makes Big Trouble in Little China look like nothing. And you know, this is discovery. Like, I actually had my teacher Lao Tzu take me to an antique store where one of these guys that came over from China back in the 1940s held my command blocks for, it's I think I picked them up in like 2000. And he's like, I had no idea what these were for. And you come in, you're a guilo, which is a Mandarin word for white ghost. It's a little derogatory, but it's like, how do you know about this? I'm like, my teacher told me to come in and ask for them. It's like, I'm freaking out right now. I don't even know what to say because you're asking for something that I've had in my back room for 50, 60 years. And you know, it just goes on. I mean, I found terracotta warriors in a false wall in one of the antique stores, 3 of them.
Oh
3.
my gosh.
This guy to this day probably still has them. And he was like, oh yeah, I've got 3 of them. If you find someone, I give you a finder's fee of $200,000 each. I said, listen, the last person that consciously sold one of these or purchased one was Bill Gates. So I don't know where these 3 came from or how they got here, but the juice is off the hook. And I would be more mindful not to probably let people know you have that, because you might end up in deep trouble. But he had a false wall that was like 10 feet wide, and he'd pull it out, and they're just sitting there. I mean, you can experience the energy I'm talking about right now.
Yes.
It is potent. And I went through, his name was Henry. I said, look, you've got a lot of things that are stolen from temples that I think you should like surrender and, you know, send back to where they came from, because you're basically buying into some really bad juju. The protectors and keepers of these particular items that you have acquired are telling me very clearly that you're going to get into some very bad. You want to talk about luck? Bad luck is coming your way if you continue or even think about selling this stuff. And he was just like, oh my goodness. And I mean, this goes on. You go into a building and somehow it merges into 3 other buildings that you don't even know of that exist, and you go underground. I mean, it's wild. We'll have to have those conversations with them. But you know, there's 2 really nice Taoist temples there too. One on Powell Street is called the Jade Empress Palace, and you should definitely go in there. They're all welcoming. Like, this is truly a place of worship. You don't need to speak Mandarin. All you do is walk up there, and they will welcome you in. Take a couple of incense and pray to the 3 pure ones, the Jade Emperor, the 3 pure ones are there. And it's just, all the boundaries disappear, and you realize you're just here in a state of awareness, and you're as one. And you would think that, you know, culturally, oh, well, you know, I'm walking into a Taoist temple in the middle of Chinatown, and they just welcome you in. And, you know, it's as it should be, because that's the true essence of Taoism, is to just bring that return. You know, Taoist, when I transcribed the Tao Te Ching last year with Lao Tzu, we call this a magical register. So it's actually every verse, there's 81 verses. Every verse is an incantation. That incantation has 81 levels of consciousness that you move through. And also it has a frequency, a shape, and a color that goes with that incantation. So it's an experience. So when you read it, you are being mirrored your true self, which is whole. So you instantly unify to that state.
Yes.
And it's like, it's potent. It's a living scripture. I'll send you a copy.
Oh, thank you. I love that. I love Lao Tzu. That was when I was in my 20s. I felt like that was home to read. Just whatever, you know. Obviously, it's a translation, but I tried to find a translation that retained at least 3 meanings for each of the passages. Well, otherwise, it's not quite deep enough. You're going
to get a whole different, because we use it as a magical register. So
perfect. It is. You're right. You can feel it, even if you're just reading the sort of a dumbed down version. You can still sense something powerful here. It does bring you back to home. It does connect you.
When you read this one, you're going to blow the roof off. You're wired for sound, my dear friend. So you're already going to go, holy moly. We'll take one verse at a time, and I might microdose it, because so energetically sensitive, this stuff will just literally have you go off into 5 other different dimensions instantaneously, because you're so sensitive to the energy potential. And this is I need the audience to know this is a mastery that Cynthia has acquired through her own cultivational practices. And it's available to anyone, but you have to find a path to do that. It's like, it's not just and it can be. I mean, I think personally, you and I have lived our lifetimes just falling into this knowing.
Yes.
And that's how I experienced it. And you know, it can happen. I'm not going to dismiss it that it's not possible, because it happens. I've had students that literally instantly are experiencing the material, and they just admit it, and they're now replicating this resonance.
Yes.
And it's like, holy moly, this is, you know. And so a lot of the energy potential, like Kundalini experiences and things of that nature, do not have to have a negative connotation, because you activating and within a Taoist path we're burning in the energy architecture. It is as palpable as your physical flesh.
Oh yes.
You are now able to maestro it, have imperium over it, so you can direct it in any way you want, instead of it just being sort of like I had a random Kundalini experience, which happens to a lot of people, and I imagine that's why they come looking for deeper teachings from yourself, is to understand, okay, what does that mean to me?
Yes.
Because I think a lot of people get lost. I get a lot of students that are like, oh, I've had all these energetic experiences, yet they're not connected with their knowing and their teachers. So there's like, it's empty. There's no dialogue with that. What I call, it's a facet of the diamond. I'm having a dialogue with my teacher, which is the monologue of the primordial mother, which is the knowing. So, you know, my experience with Lao Tzu, I see him as I see you. I experience him as I experience the physical material state in this space. And that's where people freak out. So when I call on him and he comes into a space, he moves through their physical body and they get to experience it. They go, what in Tao's name was that? And that, you know, you and I understand this. I mean, there was an infinite amount of spirits and energies through this universe.
Yes. This is so beautiful.
Yes.
This has been such a great conversation today. I've had so much fun.
I am so grateful for you.
I'm so grateful for you. And I'm so looking forward to reading this book that you'll share with me. And I'm hoping that you enjoy my book, The Mandela Effect in Its Society, also. I'm sure you'll have a lot of fun with it too.
Yeah, so I'm going to bring the audience's attention to all your social sphere and into the web. I will put it under this podcast.
Thank
I
you.
want everyone to go out and experience Cynthia's offerings. And you're also available for one-on-one sessions?
Yes, that's true. Yes. So you can reach me through my website. It's RealityShifters.com. And that's the best way to see what's happening. Sign up for my newsletter and see the books and the meditation CD and the blog and so forth. And I think the social media is pretty findable that way. But I'm on YouTube and Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or X, as they say, and a few others. I'm trying to remember. MeWe, Alignable, Blue Sky. Basically, I don't live on social media. What happens is I'll post things there. And so if people are trying to direct message me, email tends to be best, because I don't live on the social media. It's too much.
It does, right? It's programmed to devour your attention.
Yes.
I've stepped away from it a lot. I just post these incredible conversations. And as for Instagram, I'm like, I removed myself. I got caught up. I was like literally hypnotized. And so before you know it, I had 70,000 followers in like 3 months. And then
no.
I went to my teacher. I said, let's do why are you getting me? It's like a monkey in a grinder. It's like, I want you to capture these little, right? They want you to capture these little like notes of wisdom. Oh, listen to me here and there. I'm like, no. I'll bring my attention through the audience that I'm having these incredible conversations, but I refuse to be the monkey in the grinder with this social sphere nonsense. It does. It's a punishment for everyone included. And strangely, I mean, people get really caught up in that and they just disappear into it. And that's okay if that's what you want, but you will realize you're being consumed by something else that is not for us to determine what that is. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, my dear friend. I'm so
Thank
grateful to have
you.
you as a friend and calling you a friend
Oh,
and having
thank
this bond.
you.
And I have so much love for you. It's unconditional, as you already know.
Yes.
And I look forward to further conversations. And we will come back around in the future. In the future.
Yes. Thank you,
Have,
San Qing. Thank you so much for all you do. Really appreciate you.
and I really appreciate you. So I want to thank you. I want to thank the universe for bringing you into my life. I want to thank the audience for sharing their time with us today. And I am your humble servant and Sifu, Taoist Master San Qing. And I'll see you on the next one, guys.